Good morning. My name is Edward Wasrum. We are going to continue from where we stopped the other time. In today's class, we are going to look at basic data handling, which is a continuation of what we did last week. Actually, in running regression, the first thing the researcher does is to prepare his or her data set for analysis. And once the data sets, mainly time series data, are being prepared for analysis, a good researcher is expected to look out for the presence of an outlier in the worksheet. The word outlier in research means the presence or the existence of a very large number among the numbers in the data sets in the Excel. An outlier may also be caused by the existence of structural break and computational error. The presence of an outlier will harm the regression or results in all cases. For instance, it will make you see the variable as having a unit root problem, whereas it does not have a unit root problem. What it has is a structural break. Secondly, it will affect the significance of parameter estimates and give different signs. And lastly, it makes the estimate or the estimated parameter deviate from its expected a priori. The word a priori means the expected presumptions, assumptions, predictions, or theoretical expectation of the researcher. What the researcher expects the explanatory variable to behave, or how the researcher expects the explanatory variable to behave on the explained variable. Therefore, it is expected that the researcher should take a critical assessment of the data sets before the estimation should be done in the first place. And the easiest way to identify the presence of an outlier in any data set is to plot a line graph of that particular data set, because the line graph will expose the data set to the reader as to enable you to know the presence or absence of an outlier in the data set. So basically, this morning we are expected to view a data set in an Excel to enable us know how an outlier looks like. We also do a minor graph to enable us know how an outlier will appear in a graph. Let's go to a data set. Let me show us what a data set actually looks like. For instance, if I go to my desktop, this is my desktop. This is a data set on fiscal deficit and economic development in Nigeria from 1981 to 2021. This data set was used for a study on the effect of fiscal deficits and economic development in Nigeria. And if you look at these data sets, if you take a critical look at these data sets, you will now observe that from 1981 to the last year, the data set appears in a particular trend, in a particular sequence. There is no bogus figure in between the data sets, rather the figures have a sequence of movement. And given that the data set has a sequence of movement, it will also be very difficult here most of the time to use the eye view to identify the presence of an outlier, except is an outlier that is very, very conspicuous. So basically, it is expected that you load the data into an A-view platform to enable you to identify the presence of an outlier in a data set, because an outlier will make the graph look very, very, very sharp, or take a shape that will be very, very visible and obvious that an outlier occurred in the data set. But one thing should be also known that outlier are not structural breaks. However, structural breaks also appears to be outliers, but the presence of outliers in most of the time are being misconstrued as structural breaks, and most of the time it makes us to actually take decision concerning the unit root characteristics of the time series when they are not having a unit truth problem. For instance, this is the data on interest rate. The presence of, if there is an outlier here, it would have been obvious. Given in 1998, for instance, if you look at interest rate in 1998, the interest rate was 16.3. So if an outlier exists, for instance, let's assume that what we have here is 4, 5, 7, 6, 7. And if, for instance, we found 4, 5, 6, 7 in 1998 interest rate, that means that when we are plotting a graph of interest rate, this outlier will be very, very obvious, because when you go to this particular point, the elevation of this graph will be very, very high. So basically, it is expected that researchers should actually look at for the presence of outliers in their data sets before they are being transferred or loaded into eView for estimation, because if an outlier exists in a data set, it actually affects the genuinity of such data and also affects the robustness and the outcome of such a regression. So basically, that is what an outlier does to a data set, and it's expected that researchers should look out for the presence of an outlier before actually using the data set for any meaningful regression. Then what happens if an outlier exists? What will the researcher do? Will you throw away the data, or will you start afresh? Yes, an outlier could be caused by structural break. An outlier also could be caused by a typing error. An outlier could also be deliberately manipulated by the researcher in the process of trying to develop or beef up his or her data set. So actually, if an outlier occurs in a data set and the researcher is not certain of how the outlier took place or how it came about, it's just actually recommended that the researcher should always go back to the original source of data, go back to their Excel sheet where the data was generated from the first place. And if for any reason he or she also finds out that the original source of data, the outlier is also in the original source of data, the researcher should try as much as he or she can to enable to change or to get the original source of the data, so that if he's taking decision or changing the data set, then it will be genuine and it will also be accepted. Basically, allowing outliers in research work causes issue, and it makes you deciding on a unit truth problem when there is no unit truth problem, or taking a decision that will affect the methodology or the approach that you use to estimate your work. So basically, researchers should also look at it, resolve the outlier issues before you can proceed for any meaningful analysis. In our next video, we are going to learn how to load data into eView, and also proceed to plot line graphs to explain the presence of outlier. Please stay tuned to our channel. Don't give up. Be with us. We have more exciting and fascinating videos. Thank you, and God bless you for watching.